Today's video is all about one of John Mayer's greatest modern additions to his live guitar rotation, a guitar that has certainly become a fan favorite and one that I think is arguably one of the best looking guitars that John currently uses live. Of course, I'm talking about his platinum silver PRS McCarty 594, or as John Mayer calls it, the Blowtorch. Alright, so the live debut of the Platinum 594 was on May 27th of 2017, the very first Dead & Company show of the year. John would use it for Space, and then as it transitioned into the other one as well. But for the rest of the show, John relied on the Super Eagle. And this is kind of a cool part in John's guitar timeline history because the Super Eagle is what he really relied on, both the Super Eagle 1 and 2 for Dead & Company, but then slowly they would get phased out in favor of 594 guitars, as we're going to get into. Of course, the most famous one at this point really being this Platinum 594. Alright, so on the surface, this looks like your regular PRS McCarty 594 and an absolutely stunning platinum metallic finish. And I've seen a few guitars, a few 594s that have been sold in this same sort of finish, but most of the ones I've seen have just been where the platinum finish is done on the front of the body of the guitar, not on the sides, back, or even the headstock. So this certainly does seem to be a very rare combination. I have no idea if you can just order one like this from PRS. I probably assume you could, but it certainly is a very unique looking 594 because I've never seen, at least personally, any one from any dealer that looks exactly like John's. And in 2018, we also got confirmation that this guitar has some customizations that were done to it as well, assuming it was specifically built for John. Reading from the quote here from Sean at PRS Guitars, directly referring to this specific 594, that one is not stock. It has a few tweaks for John that I can't discuss. I believe the pickups are the JM versions of the 5815s, not quite as hot as the standard 5815s, but hotter than the LTs. And then we have some shots. I'll throw one of them up on the screen as well for you guys, where we do have confirmation that Sean was right, that John is using the 5815 JMs, the same humbucker pickups that you got in the Super Eagle. So John clearly much favoring those sort of pickups as his kind of take on that PAF humbucker sound. And John did speak more to his love of this specific 594 and the pickups that are in it in the Guitar World May 2025 issue. And even though, relatively speaking, at the time of me making this video, it's a recent interview in our overall timeline, while we're talking about the specs of the guitar and the pickups, I think it's relevant to read from it for you guys. Now, reading the question and then John's response. So the question goes, John, you pulled out several unique guitars during the first Sphere residency, including a Fender Custom Shop replica of Jerry Garcia's famous modded Alligator Stratocaster and a white custom shop Strat that had previously belonged to Jeff Beck. But you stuck primarily to two trusty PRS models, McCarty 594 and mostly the dead spec version of your signature Silver Sky. And then Mayer responds, yes, basically 90% of the show is handled by the dead spec, and then there's particular cases for the 594. That guitar, I call it the Blowtorch. When I want to do late 60s Fillmore acid test Grateful Dead kind of SG Les Paul burning stuff, the 594 is perfect for that. It also has probably the best humbucker neck pickup I've ever played on a guitar, so when I want to do that barrel house thing, I pick up that guitar. So that's pretty kind of crazy to hear from John that he's saying that that is the best neck humbucker pickup he's ever played on a guitar. Clearly, he's worked very hard with Paul and the entire PRS team on designing his own versions of the 5815s that we saw, like I said, in the Super Eagle, that then have transitioned as well to this Platinum 594. It's a sound that John has loved, and the one thing that I would really love if PRS did. PRS, if anyone from PRS ever watches this, release those pickups on their own, or even better yet, do a Platinum Mayor signature version of the 594. It could be really cool, because I think I've only seen once on Reverb an actual set of those 5815 JM pickups go up for sale, and the only real way, from my understanding, that would have been done is if someone parted out their Super Eagle, which is absolutely insane. But yeah, basically you're never going to get those exact pickups from PRS unless you kind of do something like that or have a Super Eagle. So that'd be really cool to get those pickups, but really just awesome to hear from John that these pickups that he's designed, he's really loving. And I think that plays obviously a lot in part to him really bonding and loving this specific Platinum 594. And 2017 is a really interesting year because this is the year that John would really begin to favor using the 594 as his go-to humbucker guitar of choice. Up until this point in time, you still see him using some of the different Gibsons like the 61 Les Paul SG, but really the 594 in 2017 took over, and going forward would be John's just main humbucker guitar throughout all of the following tours. And there's a really awesome quote from John talking about the 594 model in general that at this point I want to read to you guys. The 594 is the best new guitar I've played in years. It has a vintage heart and soul, but without the technical limitations that usually come along with an old instrument. What good is an old guitar if you can't get all of that feel out of the upper frets or the intonation is off? To hear that old PAF sound but be able to articulate the notes in a way that only modern manufacturing could allow is so exciting. Right from John, kind of his thoughts on the 594 as a model, and that really just speaks to how we would see the 594 really taking over. Now, it is even more proof of John beginning to favor the 594 in 2017 is that we would see another unique 594 being used by him this year. This gorgeous all red one, which certainly seems to be a custom built 594 for John, was used not only with Dead & Company in 2017, but during the Search for Everything tour as well. And it's got a very unique layout where it's got the selector switch for the pickups down where the knobs are, and then only 3 knobs, you would assume, 2 volume controls, and then a master tone. Now, I do kind of think that John was, at the time at least, favoring this red 594 over the Platinum one because you would see him using the red 594 for both Dead & Company and during the Search for Everything tour, where the Platinum 594 was only used with Dead & Company in 2017. And there are a couple really awesome performances during the Search for Everything tour with this very guitar. Crossroads is one that is just super fun. And then we would see this 594 being used as well for Edge of Desire, which really is that kind of main humbucker song you can expect on most nights. And it's just another really great performance with this guitar as well. Now, even though that red 594 seemed to be a guitar that John was really vibing with, he only used it in 2017, and then it went back to really that Platinum 594 kind of being that new humbucker sort of guitar that we'd see him using with Dead & Company in 2018. There's a great performance here of Cold, Rain, and Snow that we'll take a little bit of a listen to. And then as well for 2018, here's a performance of It Hurts Me Too with that Platinum 594. So the Platinum 594 was very much originally a Dead & Company guitar. From everything I've seen, it wasn't used during the Search for Everything World Tour. John just would bring it out for performances with Dead & Company. But that would change during the 2019 World Tour. Certainly my favorite out of the modern kind of era of John Mayer tones and touring, the 2019 World Tour was absolutely brilliant. Now, the very first time I've seen John using the Platinum 594 during the 2019 World Tour, and the debut, if you will, of him using it with his own music, was in Melbourne, the very third show of the 2019 World Tour for Edge of Desire, the tour debut as well of that song for the 2019 World Tour. Okay, so the 2019 World Tour is underway. The Platinum 594 now is being used for John's own music. However, it's not the only 594 John would begin using in 2019, because we have the guitar that would eventually become Honey. Now, I've made a whole video talking about this specific guitar, so we're not going to get into it here. Just kind of the basic notes is that in May of 2019, John did a live stream with a 594 that is Honey. Then it was sent off for modifications, and then next thing you know, he's performing with Dead & Company in 2019, and this guitar has 3 humbucker pickups, modifications, and it kind of became the new go-to Dead & Company guitar. So while the Platinum 594 was originally an exclusive Dead & Company guitar, it transitioned then to be using for John's own music, and then a new 594 known as Honey replaced it, kind of 2019, that kind of time frame there. So kind of just some interesting things to note, but overall, starting with 2017, between the red 594, the Platinum one, and then of course eventually Honey, you know, over those few couple years, the 594 really very clearly becoming John's favorite humbucker style of guitar. So while Honey in 2019 really became that go-to main Dead & Company guitar, the Platinum 594 really never saw any sort of retirement or real break. It was always a guitar that we saw in that live rotation, and there are some really great performances kind of 2021 into 2022 with this guitar. And one of my favorites that when I asked on my Instagram story for you guys to send some examples in for me to kind of take a look at and maybe add to this video, one of my absolute favorites kind of in the later Dead & Company tours is It Hurts Me Too in Mansfield in September of 2021. This is such a great example of the just tone of this guitar because it's a bit of a cleaner sort of sound that John is going for. You hear just some amazing neck pickup tones, and then the solo tones on the bridge pickup as well are really stellar. This is just an absolutely great performance, and it's become really one of my favorites with this guitar. So thanks to Ryan Riley for sending this one in. He said he was there and it was a great weekend, and yeah, it definitely sounds like it. Pretty cool as well, just speaking of Honey, how you can see that guitar actually on the stage behind John. Both of the 594s definitely getting a lot of love at this point in time. But yeah, for just kind of the cleaner tones of that guitar, this one, It Hurts Me Too, is one of my favorites. I'll link the entire performance in the description down below for you guys. Moving on now to 2022, and we have the Saab Rock Tour, and this guitar continued on being used as that main Edge of Desire guitar, and it was that throughout the entire tour. There was like one time John played a Paul's guitar, which was pretty cool to see for Edge of Desire, but 99% of the time, if John was playing Edge of Desire, this was the guitar that he was going to use, and the footage you guys will just be seeing is from the March 13th Forum Night 1 performance of the tour, the exact show that I went to, and it was just such a great time. In 2024 with Dead & Company, of course, we have just such a massive moment, the first Sphere residency that the band would do. And even from that Guitar World May 2025 article that I referenced earlier, it talks about how the Dead spec was that main go-to guitar for Dead & Company at this point in time. But for any humbucker sort of sounds that John would need, this Platinum 594 would be the guitar that he would use. And on June 4th, 2024, John would join Zach Bryan live for a performance of Better Days, and he would use this Platinum 594 for this performance. And I believe I'm right in saying that outside of his own music and Dead & Company, this is the only time we've seen John using this specific guitar. Usually if John makes a guest appearance, you would expect him to kind of lean into the sound he's known for, right? Like a Strat or a Silver Sky. So to see him relying on a humbucker guitar for this performance and choosing the Platinum 594, I think even speaks more to the fact that in terms of, not that it's necessarily a signature guitar, but really if John's picking a go-to humbucker guitar for his sort of that type of sound of his, this is the guitar that he is going to use, and it was just a really, really great performance. And then moving on into 2025, we would have Dead & Company's second residency at Sphere. And again, the guitar setup, everything was pretty much the same. I know the visuals and stuff had changed, but in terms of John's rig, everything had kind of more or less stayed the same. And of course, the Blowtorch, that Platinum 594, being heavily used for those humbucker sounds throughout that residency as well. And I'll find a different song, some other footage for you guys to take a listen to as well from that residency in 2025. And in 2025, we would have the Grateful Dead 60th anniversary shows in San Francisco with Dead & Company performing just some really fantastic shows. And who would have thought, watching these clips as they came out, you know, people going to these shows, that these would be the last shows that Bob Weir would perform. So they're obviously, you don't need to say any more, they're extremely, extremely special. Footage of John with this guitar from these shows has proven a little difficult to find. I'm gonna, even after I'm done recording this, gonna try and find some more for you guys. I found some of him performing China Cat Sunflower and I Know You're Rider. That'll work, but I'm gonna try and find a little bit of better footage for you guys. But either way, these performances are extremely special. You know, probably the last, at least obviously in this, you know, form, the last performances that Dead & Company will ever do. Bob Weir's last performances, just very special. And, you know, we're not quite a year, you know, from these shows happening or anything like that, but it's just, still, it's just crazy to think of every time I go and watch this footage. It's, you know, I think it's the first thing everyone thinks of. It's just like, you know, it's hard to believe, you know, we're not going to hear any more live music, you know, live performances from Bob. So, you know, these are extremely special anyways, and hopefully by the time you guys are actually watching this, I found some better footage of John with that Platinum 594 from these shows for you all to watch. And that is going to conclude the story of John Mayer's Platinum PRS McCarty 594, or as now we just have to call it, the Blowtorch. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This guitar is certainly a massive fan favorite, so it was really fun just to go and make an entire video dedicated to this one guitar. Talk a little bit about other 594s, a little bit throughout, like that red one, and then a little bit of Honey as well, just to give some of that, you know, greater context as to just how much John overall has really been loving the 594. It's a guitar that I've personally not had a lot of time with, but it's one that I would love to just, you know, even just to get for a little bit of time and just enjoy playing it. It just would be kind of a cool experience to actually really get to know the guitar as well. So if any of you guys own them, let me know what you think of them in the comments down below. And if Mayer actually inspired you to get a McCarty 594, they just seem to be absolutely really amazing guitars. And at this point in time, I definitely think this guitar is going to be around for the long haul. It would be so cool, I think, if PRS actually did a Mayer signature version of the 594, throw in those 5815 JM pickups, do it in this platinum finish, and maybe a couple others as well, like the Robin Ford signature PRS. I forget if it's a 594 or not off the top of my head, but just the all black kind of finish that one has, just absolutely stunning. A few of my friends have owned them, like my friend Ahmad, shout out Ahmad, he's owned one, and they're just, yeah, gorgeous looking guitars. Anyways, besides the point, that'd be so cool, I think, to see John actually have a different signature guitar with PRS besides the Silver Sky, and of course the Super Eagles and stuff like that. But that could be really cool. Maybe even do a honey version of it with 3 pickups. I don't know, could be kind of cool. We can dream maybe one day. But you guys, I hope you really enjoyed this video. And if you haven't watched any of the other ones I've done in kind of the stories of John Mayer's guitars series that I've done, go and give them a watch. And if there are any guitars that I haven't done yet that you'd like to see me do a video like this on, let me know in the comments down below. They take quite a while to make, do all the research and try and find the best footage, but they're definitely the videos that on the channel I'm the most proud of, at least. So hope you enjoyed this one, you guys. Have a great rest of your day. Take care. And as always, I will see you on the next video.
Anyway, go ahead and click the subscribe button if you like what you see.